Grace and peace to you from the God who was and who is to come. Amen. It was going so well. You can imagine how elated Peter felt. Jesus had turned to his disciples, and he first took the public opinion poll. Tell me, what are people saying about me? Who do they think I am? I said, well, this is what we're hearing. We got some people saying you might be John the Baptist. We got some people saying you might be one of the other prophets. Some people just have no clue. But then he says these important words. He asked them a question that resonates through history to every single human being since. But you, who do you say that I am? Then Peter, who blurts things all the time, blurts a good thing. He says, you are the Messiah. You are the Christ. In fact, at that point, his name wasn't Peter. His name was Simon, son of Jonah. This was when he got his name Peter, because it was Jesus who says, I'm going to change your name. You were Simon. Now you're going to be Rocky, which is what Greek for Petros means. You're going to be rock, because you are the rock upon which I'm going to build my church. This confession of faith, I mean, he was soaring. He was soaring. Jesus, his Lord, had given him a new name and said, it's on you and on this confession that I'm going to build everything that I'm doing. You can imagine, his ego was a little inflated. I will give you the keys to the church. And then Jesus outlines his plan. What does it mean for him to be Messiah? What's this going to look like? We're going to go to Jerusalem. I'm going to be captured, tortured, suffer. I'll be killed, and then I'll be raised on the third day. Ready, break. All right? And Peter says, all full of his new name, I got a better plan. That plan did not poll well. That plan is the plan of a loser. And we're kind of hoping this will be a winner's movement. So he says, no suffering, no death. Maybe, we didn't even know all what he suggested, but it was not the way that Jesus was planning to go. And so he gets a new name. Few sentences after he had just received the name of Peter, he hears these words from his Lord. Get behind me, Satan. That's a rough day, right? I mean, you think about it. He went from being here to being down here. As Ron would say, that escalated quickly, right? Why is it that Jesus reacts so strongly to this beloved disciple of his? What is it that's going on for him? Because that seems to be an uncharacteristically strong response for him. Well, it's because he's heard this plan before. This isn't the first time that Jesus has heard about alternative ways of being a Messiah. Do you remember when he was driven out into the wilderness and Satan met him and then tempted him? And he was understanding that the way to go was the way through the prophet's wisdom of standing up for justice, of reaching out and welcoming all people in God's name, and that always brings criticism, sometimes pain and suffering and rejection. And so Satan came to him and said, I've got another plan. Use military force, use impressive displays of power, promise rewards that you might not be able to deliver. Use tried and true political methods because you could get an army behind you. And he rejects all those temptations in the wilderness, and then when Peter brings it up again, he rejects it again. Says, your eyes are not set on the right things. You want to be a winner. And in God's kingdom, it's the losers that win. In fact, the way that you'll find your way to God is most commonly going to be through your mistakes, through your moments where you've made errors in judgment, through internal prejudices that you've lived out, and then you've seen the wisdom of God's view. It's in those moments that we actually grow spiritually, not by just being successful. So the question for us is then, how do you measure success? What would the Church of Jesus Christ look like if it was hugely successful? Would it be mega church with mega bucks and mega power? Will we get to a place where we could just change the way in which the world works by sheer political domination? Would that be the way would that be recognizable to Jesus if he were to show up today and walk amongst us? Well, I want to give you some alternative examples. After the Boston massacre, the Boston Marathon massacre that had taken place, the bombing that had happened, there were all these threats to the Islamic Society of Boston Cultural Center, and so the people, the Muslims who were part of that community, were in fear. They were also shocked and horrified by what had happened on that day. They did not at all stand for what had taken place. But what I loved was that you had this group of people, many of them who were followers of Jesus, with these signs that say, "We have your back." Would this might be a little bit of what it looks like? Or as we've just seen in the past week or so, where we've seen people drive from other parts of the country, bringing their boats to Houston so that they could be part of the rescue that goes on, rescuing people as much as they possibly can who are struggling in that part of the world. Might Jesus see himself in them? Or for all the people who are standing up to support the dreamers, those who right now their condition in our country feels threatened about will they be able to continue to study as students here in the United States. And so folks are standing up and saying, "We dream with you." Would Jesus recognize the Church of Jesus Christ in these moments? You see, all of those things are also controversial, right? At some level. At some level, it's getting involved. And it's getting involved in standing up for people that oftentimes are vulnerable. And when we do that, Jesus says something amazing. He says, when we do that, you will find your life. Now, the word that's used for life there is psyche. Psyche is, it's the root of psychology, right? But it's really, the understanding of that is it's the same word that's used in other places for soul. Soul, that connection that we have to our essence. Who it is that we are, that we were created to be in our heart. That little bit of us that constantly whispers to us and always wants us to follow our true path. The word psyche, literally, if you figure out what that word means in Greek, it means butterfly, which is, I think, an apt way of describing our souls. They're beautiful. They're somewhat ephemeral. They're elusive. They touch down for a bit. They are also created and forged. Their beauty comes from the chrysalis of suffering and letting go of who they were as a caterpillar. All right? So that sense of our soul, that's what Jesus is saying. He says, if you want to win, and you're going to define success by winning, you're going to lose your butterfly soul. If you want to define your life as I will only be a success if I have this thing, if I can have these achievements, if my side wins, then you put at risk that which is most precious about you, that which God has put in your life to give us a compass forward. And so we find ourselves once again back in this struggle that happens in us, the struggle between the ego, the false self, and the soul, the true self. Jesus is saying, bet on your true self. Bet on who you are in God's eyes, and bet on that which God has created is so much more precious than you can possibly imagine. But that the way is through denying this other self, the one that has to be, it's my way or the highway, that we find someone to resent or be hostile against, that we have jealousy, and instead we look towards how can I protect me and mine. The soul says, go the opposite direction. expand your view of who us are. Try and have bigger tents. Try and find a way to understand people you disagree with as opposed to just disagreeing. And so that leads us to this really, I think, ongoing, meditative, and challenging place as human beings. We are, in fact, the people that we've been waiting for. Who's going to rescue society, church, country, world? We are, but not by being winners, but by being ourselves, our true selves, by listening to the still small voice that pushes us towards compassion, by being generous with our resources towards people who are in need, and through adopting, which is going to be, I'm announcing a new theme for the next 2 months. It's going to be the priesthood of all believers. You see, we need to have a different model of church. For a long time, the model of church has been that there's a person who wears a funny shirt, and that is the priest, right? But here, Martin Luther said that all baptized people, Emiliano right now, is the newest priest in our midst. He has a ministry that only he can do. But that's true for every one of us. There is something about you, your butterfly soul, that only you can bring to bear in the world. And sometimes, I just got to confess, the church has gotten in your way. We've turned this whole thing into a consumeristic deal, where you come and you consume what hopefully will give meaning in your life, instead of understanding that all of this, the sharing of word and sacrament, is to propel you into your ministry, in your place of work, in your home, in this congregation, to find out what it is that only you can do that we need. I mean, we're all in churches everywhere and in organizations being forced, and I think this is a healthy forcing, to figure out how do we, with shrinking budgets but increasing human need all in our society, address our mission. And the answer is through all of us. We are going to be the ones that are going to have to pick up the mantle of basic, what do we do to run this operation of called church, but also, and more importantly, how do we reach out to this world that God so loves? The world that is, I don't know if I just went through the front page of the paper and a couple different newspapers this morning. Criminy, alligators and fire ants rolling around in the streets of Houston? This feels apocalyptic. We need people who are going to be committed to love, to having less so that we can do more, towards reaching out beyond our comfort zones so that God could create in us new places of comfort. Because when we do it, when we release that false self, we have the promise of this. You will find your soul. You will find your life. May God make it true for us. Amen.